Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. We all love monsters, right? It's a key aspect of fantasy. What good is an adventurer such as yourself if there are no mighty monsters for you to test your mettle against? To write tales of your valiant deeds? But many monsters are biologically, well, stupid. So today, I want to look at those monsters and help you design better monsters for your own world building. I want to begin with one of the biggest monsters in all of mythology. The world serpent, Jormungandr. This is the child of Loki. And there is one thing about this monster which is painfully obvious. It is massively, gigantically big. This monster is the walking embodiment of your mama so fat jokes. Well, if it could walk, that is. This monster is so big that when it moves, it creates earthquakes. It is so big that when it sits around the world, it sits around the world. Yep, this giant snake is so freaking long that it encircles the globe, and then it swallowed its own tail. And it keeps chewing on its own tail. And this is one of our first problems. Who here knows about the Pokemon Slowpoke? One of my favorites. This little dopey guy has such a slow nervous system that if you step on its tail, it's going to be several minutes before it realizes it. And that is exactly what is happening with Jormungandr. At this size, any nerve response it sends out will take several minutes, if not more, to reach the tail. Yep, this thing probably doesn't even realize that it is chewing on its own tail. And the work to pull the tail out of its mouth is going to be just as hard. Oh, I'm not done. That isn't even its biggest problem. What could possibly be worse? Its heart and its blood. Think about it. How big is your heart? And a whale's. It's bigger still. And how big is the heart of Jormungandr? It is going to be gigantic if it's going to pump blood from its head to its tail. That will create a few problems. There is resistance with pumping blood. Just the circulating of it will add to the pressure of each heartbeat. At this size, we are talking about as much blood as an ocean that needs to be circulated with each heartbeat. And how long is that going to take? Well, if we are going at supersonic speeds, it's going to take several hours at the high end. Let me put this into perspective. It's going to take enough force to launch a rocket into space to get the blood to go from its head to its tail in 1 hour. That is Mark 34. Yeah, I did the whole calculations when I did Jormungandr. It's insane, and it doesn't work. That blood velocity will cause the capillaries to burst. Yet, that is at an hour time limit. And that's the problem. Cells need oxygen. And if we are going to get oxygen to its tail, we need to maintain the oxygen levels the whole way. That means it will need to be transported the whole distance by red blood cells, which need the same oxygen to survive. And how long can it carry the oxygen? Well, not an hour. So yeah, this is going to be impossible at this size. And this is before we add in the lungs. It'll take time to get the oxygen from the nose and mouth to the lungs, and at this size, it's going to be miles and miles. That is going to result in heavy mixing of old and new air, which would dilute the oxygen concentration needed to sustain such an animal. So, what can we do to fix this? Well, it's pretty simple. We are going to make it much smaller, down to a few 100 feet at most. Yep, that's all it would take to make this monster more viable. And it would actually make it more dangerous. Tell me, where would be the easiest place to battle a snake that wraps around the world? Well, obviously, anywhere besides the head. That means, once you find its body, just walk around until you find a good spot to strike it down. The owlbear is a classic monster of Dungeons & Dragons. It's an owl mixed with a bear, hence the name. It's a burrow-like creature with an owl head. It's got feathers covering its body, which is bear-shaped, and its wings are modified into bear-like paws, with back legs matching. It's big and powerful. It's a giant flightless bird. What we have here is a very common problem, and that is just taking two animals and smashing them together. Here we just took a bird and just added the strength of a bear. It should be simple, but no. Animals are very well specialized to do what they do. And that is the thing with owls. They are often associated with wizards, but no, an owl should be associated with a rogue. Seriously, an owl is a min-max stealth build. This thing is a near perfect aerial assassin. Its feathers are designed for silent flight. Their eyes are incredibly large to allow for increased light intake for night vision. But that means its eyes aren't able to rotate in their sockets. They have to turn their head to look in different directions. So to fix this, they increased the mobility of their vertebrae. In particular, they did two things. The first is to reduce the thickness of the neck. The largest of owls only have a neck as thick as your thumb. This makes it fragile and increases the risk of injury. Yet the second is more dangerous. In most species, the vertebrae have two attachment points to the skull. This provides stability, but owls only have one. This offers vastly increased flexibility at the cost of being even more fragile. And in the case of an owl, extremely vulnerable. Any blow to an owl's head runs the risk of breaking it, and with it, death. And while researching the owlbear, I dreaded reading one simple line. That the owlbear can turn its head around like an owl. I can tell you, my heart sank when I read this. It's bad. Now, how does the owlbear attack? Well, it charges in and uses its claws to pin down prey before ripping it open with its beak. This is the same method as the bear. That means it is going to be bringing its neck closed into attack. And at the size of the owlbear, its neck would likely only be the size of your wrist, if it's lucky, but it might be smaller. That means that any blow to the skull would run a high risk of shattering the fragile spine of the owlbear. One good punch, and you might really be able to knock its block off. Yeah, it's bad. This is an example of trying to combine two completely separate builds into one. In concept, a bear is a barbarian or a fighter, a warrior who employs raw force and power through physical domination of their foe. And like I said, an owl is a rogue. Do you know many heavily armored warriors hefting massive weapons with them, attempting to sneak about? Well, I've known a couple who have tried, but it usually doesn't work too well. Yes, there are a few abilities one might want from the second class, but they are still fighting according to one main class. So how do we fix the owlbear? Simply put, we need to remove the owl's neck. Go with a standard bear-like neck, and it would fix the problem. Alternatively, rather than use a bear, let's mix the owl with another species, one that also favors ambush attacks. And for this, I think the best would be a cheetah. Most large cats are more of a rogue fighting style too. And the cheetah is the perfect glass cannon that adds speed and power to the owl's stealth. Likewise, the cheetah likes to avoid brawls. This is a better pairing. This one is an amalgamation of several mythical creatures, such as Pegasus, Trulima, griffins, hippogriffs, and some variations of the hippocampus. They are all large winged mythical creatures, often the size of a horse or a lion. And here's the problem. I've harped on this a few times to be sure. The largest flying animal in the fossil record is Quetzalcoatlus. And since we are dealing with fossils, we have incredible inconsistency on its size and weight. But on the high end, it's half the weight of a horse, and has a wingspan of 50 feet or 15 meters. But others with nearly double the wings, and the weight is a quarter. With this, we could estimate the wings of such animals being over 100 feet easily, and potentially even more. This creates a few additional problems. The first being just managing those wings. If you try to flap them, they will easily strike the ground. And if you are in a forest or a city, those wings are going to get caught in branches and buildings, and that means a high risk of damaging them. The second issue that arises comes when you flap them. You will create a whip-like effect. Due to the size of its wings, you will likely strain the joints, leading to damage of the ligaments and tendons. Of course, the obvious fix is to strengthen them, and that means adding weight. Now, earlier I talked about birds like the owl being heavily in a min-max build to fly. And to create a griffin or pegasus, we will need to do the same. So let me ask you, why don't we have giant flying animals in our world? Well, it's too heavy to work. And that is, the better solution is to go small. Reduce the size of a pegasus or griffin down to the size of a house cat. Maybe you could make it work with a very small horse, though that might be a stretch. Lastly, I want to pick on the Sphinx. The legendary flying lion body and woman-headed monster, She has all the same problems as the Pegasus and other such mythical creatures. But she has an extra challenge. Lion claws are capable of tearing flesh, but they are meant to hold prey down, and then delivers the killing blow with a bite from the jaw. And a human's mouth isn't going to be enough. Nope. You could do some damage, but not enough to effectively kill. This means that the Sphinx is going to have trouble killing its prey, especially if they happen to have a weapon of their own. And how do we fix this? Well, a true human head isn't going to work. Bulking up the jaw and adding proper fangs, this would remove the woman's face's beauty, but allow for it to hunt. Alternatively, we could replace the clawed paws of a lion with human hands, and thus allow the Sphinx to use a weapon and become an equal foe to humans. A lot of mythical creatures are heavily flawed in how they would work in a real world. The flawed idea which arises when people attempt to mix two random animals and think that they would work. No. There are things which you would need to consider when combining different animals into new mythical creatures, and these all fall into reckless reimagining. No, for most mythical creatures to be functionally possible, they would still need to follow the basic rules of biology and physics. Yet, not all mythical creatures are poorly designed. Many are actually very well designed, though that can make them much less interesting. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.